it's Katie and welcome back to my booktube channel. So because we are getting really close to Halloween, I wanted to do a fun video for you guys where I recommend some Halloween festive books. So that's what this video is. It is my Halloween book recommendations. So let's jump into it. So the first chunk of books I have to recommend are ones I talk about a lot on this channel, so I figured I would kind of just speed through them, but they're basically all the books on this shelf. These are like all of my favorite fantasies, and every single one of these I feel like can fit some part of the Halloween like spooky vibes. So first I'm gonna actually grab this one because I don't think you guys can see it way over there. But up first we have Stalking Jack the Ripper and Hunting Prince Dracula by Kerri Maniscalco. I'm sure this entire series would fit Halloween, but I've only read the first two. I actually read Hunting Prince Dracula today and I loved it. But these are definitely very spooky and they feel very cold. It's definitely like the creepier side of Halloween, but it's not really like scary. So if you're not into horror, I think you can still read this, but it's definitely very creepy. I have a full review of Stalking Jack the Ripper that I did from Hallowreads last year, so I will link that for you guys. But these are basically historical fiction mystery novels, and I'm usually not into either of those genres, but it really works, and it also probably helps that I love Kerri Maniscalco's writing. But basically this one follows, you know, two characters who are trying to solve the case of Jack the Ripper, and they also, I don't know the right word for it, but I don't want to say dissect the bodies. They kind of like work in a morgue and figure out like the cause of death for these victims. I can't think of what that is called at the moment, but that is what our characters are. And because it takes place in the 1800s, I think. Yeah, it takes place in like the 1880s. So because it takes place way back then, our main character Audrey is basically going against all of the standards for women at that time, and she is also pretending to be a guy in this book in certain aspects because people don't take her seriously because she's a woman. So it also deals with a lot of those elements, but it all combines for a really great, really intense, creepy book. And there's also some really creepy pictures throughout it, so maybe don't read it at night. I'm trying to find some for you guys. This isn't really a picture, but there's also like little letters written between characters that you get, and this one's not really creepy, but I just thought it was funny, so I'm gonna show you guys that. But there's some creepy ones, like this one's really creepy, of them like dissecting a cadaver. But basically, super creepy, and it feels very, like, cold, and the characters are very calculated, so, like, every aspect of this book feels very calculated in, like, the best way. So if you're into mysteries or historical fiction, definitely start this series. After that, we have the Kingdom of the Wicked series, so Kingdom of the Wicked and Kingdom of the Cursed, also by Kerri Maniscalco. And that involves witches and also princes of hell, so definitely paranormal and spooky. And it also is kind of historical fiction, even though the time period isn't as like obvious. It's definitely historical fiction as well, and there's a mystery because in the first book it's basically about twin witches and one of them is murdered, and so Amelia is trying to figure out who murdered her sister and ends up working with one of the princes of hell who she's been warned to stay away from for her entire life. And it's so good. One of my favorite series of all time. And I have reviews for both of these books on this channel, so I will link that in the description for you guys to go check those out. But I highly recommend those. I talked about that series a lot. And we also have the Crave series by Tracy Wolff. I have all three books here. They're all so good. Each one gets better and better than the one before it. And I feel like a lot of people think the series is really cliche, and I think book one definitely is a little cliche. It also feels very nostalgic. If you loved Twilight as a kid, I think you would love this series. But it's just so good. Basically any paranormal creature you can think of, at least all like the main ones, are in this series. It's like, I don't know if it fits dark academia, but it takes place at this academy where all the students there are paranormal creatures, and our main character, Grace, does not really know paranormal creatures exist, and I think her parents die, and that forces her to move to this academy because her uncle and cousin are there, and obviously she gets like sucked into this paranormal world, and the love interest is a vampire, so you have all that going for it, but it's definitely like a fun, also really intense book. But it's my favorite part are all of the chapter titles. They really made me laugh for some reason, so it's also very humorous at the same time. There's a good balance, so it's not really as creepy as some of the other books I'm probably recommending today, but that is super good. And then the other books on this shelf, they're not really spooky or creepy. It's just more the magical aspect of Halloween. So if you don't really want anything scary or creepy and dark, I would highly recommend these. I also have a review of Once Upon a Broken Heart. These are by Stephanie Garber. I don't know if I said that. One of my other favorite authors. And Once Upon a Broken Heart came out at the end of September, so it's very recent, but I loved it. So good. It takes place in the same world as the Caraval trilogy, but it follows a completely different character. You don't have to read the Caraval trilogy before reading this, and it follows Evangeline, who grew up in like this curiosity shop. The boy she loves is about to marry somebody else, so she desperately makes a bargain with a fate who basically you're never supposed to make a bargain with, and the fate is the Prince of Hearts, and he decides he will help her stop the wedding in exchange for 3 kisses from her at any time and place of his choosing. And after the first kiss, she realizes that he basically wants more from her than she originally bargained. So good. It feels like a fairy tale, so magical. It's probably the most magical book I've ever read. I'm obsessed with it. So now that we got those out of the way and I fangirled probably too much, let's move on to some other books that I don't typically recommend a lot. And a lot of these I actually just read within these last few weeks. So the very first one is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. You guys have probably heard of this book. I feel like I'm very late to a lot of the books in this stack, but hopefully some of you have not read these yet. This is a murder mystery and also a thriller following this girl who decides for her capstone project that she is going to look into a case from the past where this girl was murdered by her boyfriend. Her boyfriend admitted to it and then committed suicide. And she's always felt like there was something wrong with the case. Nobody really asked any questions after he admitted to doing it. And she kind of digs into this and reveals some different details and secrets and ends up being threatened because of it. So a lot goes down in this book, but it is so good. And this is one of the first books that I really couldn't figure out who the killer was, and I really, really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for a good murder mystery, definitely read this one. I feel like it's 100% worth the hype. After that, we have Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi, and I feel like I don't hear enough people talk about this series. It is so good, and there's such a cool world, and the magic is so complex and amazing, and there's intense action and battle scenes. It's super brutal and dark, but it's just so captivating. And this takes place in a world called Orisha, where magic used to hum through the land, but a king managed to destroy magic or get rid of it for good, and the Magi, who are the people that had all of the magical abilities, are now being targeted and killed, and that leaves our main character Zaylee without her mother and the Magi without hope. And now Zaylee has a chance to bring back magic with the help of a runaway rogue princess, and they are trying really hard to be able to bring magic back while also running from the crown prince who's trying to eradicate magic for good. So super intense. I feel like this is a fantasy that definitely fits a fall vibe. It's not distinctly Halloween, but the magic is so rich and intense, and there's such a cool history behind it, and the themes of this book definitely are dark enough to feel like a good Halloween read. After a dark read like that one, I wanted to give you guys a couple lighter, more fun, festive reads, and I have 2 graphic novels for you guys, and the first one is Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker and Wendy Zhu. I'm so bad with names, I'm sorry, but this one is really cute and also has some really great representation. So we have our witchy character who is somebody who uses hearing aids, which I've never seen in a book before, so I loved that. And then we also have our werewolf who uses they, them pronouns. And there's also an LGBTQ plus romance in this book. So much great representation. And on top of that, it is just the cutest book. It involves like this really great friendship, and the illustration style is just so stunning. I don't know if you guys can see any of this. I don't know why I'm flipping it so weird. But it's like so fun. Like some of the scenes are gorgeous, and it's also balanced with some like darker pages as well. So I feel like there's just a great balance between the sweet romance and also like a little bit of a more serious, spookier magical element, but again, it's nothing too scary, and it's just a fun, quick, easy read with some great representation, so I definitely recommend this one. The next graphic novel I have for you guys is Brightly Woven by Alexandra Bracken, and the art is by Kit Seaton. And this is actually adapted from a novel by Alexandra Bracken, which I haven't read, so if you haven't read it either, you could still definitely read this graphic novel. But this is actually a middle grade graphic novel, but still super fun and festive, so I think anybody can read it. I had a great time. And it follows Sidel, who is a weaver, and all of a sudden this wizard kind of shows up at her house and asks for her help. And he is trying to stop this secret war from happening between kingdoms, and he needs her to come along with him to mend his magical cloaks, because if they're not mended properly, he doesn't have the magical abilities that he needs to defend himself and his people. And so they go on this journey together, and obviously tons of things go down, and Sidel also learns some things about herself. So super cute, super fun, and also some really interesting, I'm really struggling to show you guys the illustrations. Some like really fun illustrations. This is a lot more colorful than the graphic novels I usually read, and I loved it. And it also has some good like action scenes. So I really enjoyed this one, and it's super tiny. It's a quick, easy read, so definitely go pick this one up if you're looking for that. Up next, we have One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus, and this is another one that's fairly popular, but I definitely think it's worth the hype. This follows 5 high school kids that are put in detention together, but only 4 of them end up leaving alive. And so there is this murder mystery, and people are basically trying to figure out what happened to the boy who did not survive, and the 4 of the remaining students become suspects in this case. And it's just done really well because it's told from each of the perspectives of the 4 students who become suspects. So you're really trying to solve this case right along with the detectives, and you get to know each character, and you get to try to see if they have any motives or if there's anything sketchy about them. So it's written so well, and it was really fun. I had a hunch that ended up being correct about the case, but I still don't think that took anything away from how fun this book is, and I can see why people love it, and I definitely want to continue the series. I really enjoyed this one. The next one I have is These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling, and this is such a fun witchy novel. This follows an elemental witch named Hannah, and she is just trying to survive high school and get over her breakup with her ex, Veronica. But all of a sudden, that's the least of her worries when she discovers this blood ritual and dark magic is being discovered all over town. They also live in Salem, by the way. But once all this starts happening, she ends up having to work with her ex and her best friend to try to figure out what is going down and protect the people in their coven and also themselves. But there is a new girl in town named Morgan, and Morgan and Hannah end up hitting it off, but it's really hard to date in the middle of a supernatural crisis. My next recommendation is actually another graphic novel that I forgot about for a second, and that is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. I feel like this is such a sweet, festive read. It takes place at a pumpkin patch where two friends have worked together every year through high school, I think, and this is going to be their last year at the pumpkin patch together, and this takes place during their last night there. So it's all the adventures they're trying to have in the one night and their memories together, and it's just really sweet. And there's also like this cute map in the front of the little pumpkin patch and different activities that they end up doing. So it's just really sweet, and I actually read this last year for Hallowreads, and I have a book review on the channel, but I'm not going to link it because this was the first graphic novel I read, and because of that, I didn't really understand the genre, and my expectations were very skewed, so I was kind of mean in my review, I feel like. But I think my thoughts on this book have definitely changed. I didn't really like it last year, but like I said, it's because I didn't understand graphic novels. So now that I've read a lot more, I can fully appreciate how adorable this book is, and I definitely recommend that you guys pick this up. I know this video is very long, but I have one more book recommendation for you guys, and that is Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. And this is the only zombie book that I have ever read, but it is so cute. It's another one that takes place at a high school, essentially. And we have our main character who's named Mila. And these two girls at her school end up dying. People think that they committed suicide together as like a suicide pact. And a few days later, her best friend ends up dead as well. And they think the three of them had the suicide pact together, but Mila knows that her best friend would not have done that. She also is not close with those other two girls, so she thinks that it wasn't actually a suicide pact and she was murdered or there was some foul play. So since nobody believes her, Mila decides to take matters into her own hands, and she decides to do this spell to raise the dead, basically, and bring her best friend back to life. But something goes wrong, and she ends up bringing all three girls back to life, and basically has to try to wrangle them together while also figuring out what happened to them. And they basically are only back from the dead for a week. So they only have 7 days to figure out what went wrong, and it's really interesting. It's also really funny listening to the girls who came back from the dead, and the way they talk about their situation and what happened to them is really dark, but it's like dark humor, but it's my kind of humor. I thought it was really funny. And I also should have seen it coming, but for some reason I couldn't see it coming. So it's like I kind of predicted it, but I didn't want it to be true. So I just kind of ignored my instincts, and I was still surprised by the ending. But this is just a really fun zombie book. So if you want a zombie book that's not super like dark and gory, I would definitely recommend this one to you guys. I feel like this video ended up being a lot longer than I wanted it to be, so if you guys made it this far, thank you. But hopefully you guys found some books to add to your TBR and some festive, spooky books to read this Halloween. If you guys enjoyed this, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you do subscribe, please click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Also, comment down below if you have any Halloween recommendations or just some fall recommendations in general. I would love to add some more to my TBR, so definitely comment those for me. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.